Hello and welcome to this video. Who doesn't like a top 10? Who doesn't like a top 10? We all love a top 10, don't we? That's why you're here. If you're a Led Zepp fan, right, or you're a fan of this channel, you want to see me go through a top 10 and maybe even rank that top 10. That's what brings them all here. It brings them here. Now, some people have been moaning that I talk too much. Well, I'm not going to talk that much here because I've got two lists here, not one but two lists. This is going to be the Led Zeppelin mega ranking, where I'm going to rank the 30 best songs, and then I'm going to rank the albums, right? But it's more than that. It's way more than that, right? This is way more than that, right? I've got a system, because the other thing that people have been saying, they've been going, oh, you know what opinions are like, it's all subjective, it's just your opinion, blah, 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 and all that. And I like to bring a little bit of objectivity, just to challenge this postmodern dogma that everyone's swallowed whole and they don't question, that everything in the world is subjective. Of course, except for their statement where they say that everything is subjective. Of course, if that was subjective as well, then of course that statement could be true or false. So there's no point in even saying it. And then there's no point in saying anything at all, is there? You know, you may as well just say, and I can just do that on camera and you'll all come here, because it's all subjective, isn't it? It's just your subjective opinion. Right? So I thought, how could I bring in some objectivity to demonstrate to those types that you can be objective. You can't be completely objective, but you also can't be completely subjective. And on a video like this, what I endeavour to do is to try and create a system which weaves its way in between. Sometimes I err on the side of subjectivity, and other times I err on the side of objectivity. Right, so my plan was this. I thought, I'm going to come up with the 30 greatest Led Zepp songs. Okay, this is my method. So I started to write them down. Now, the thing is, there's songs I like, right, by Led Zeppelin, some of my favourite songs. But there's also songs that have penetrated into the culture, right? Led Zeppelin are such a big band that there's certain songs that where they crop up in films and on TV and there's memes about them and all that type of stuff. So if you went up to anybody and said, you know, name some Led Zeppelin songs, I'm sure we were aware of the songs they're going to pick, you know, if they were to do that. So that's what I started to do. I started to, well, we'll have that one, we'll have that one, we'll have that one. And a few that I liked popped into my head, but I thought, nah, nobody else likes that one. This one's a little bit less well known, but it's a cracking song. So eventually I had 30. Right, as I start to put them down, right, once you've got 4 or 5, right, looking at the bottom one, I can go, do I like that one more than the bottom one? I do like, then I'd place it above that, then I'd bring the next song in and I'd put it in, and do I like it above that, and I like it above that, and eventually, right, you come up with this list. That's how I create the ranking list. I don't just sit there and go, I like this the most. I compare them, right? I try and get some middle ground. You can pick a song and say, do you like this one more or less? And then eventually it evolves. So what I have here is a list of what I think are the 30 greatest Led Zepp songs. And the criteria I've used is that they're brilliant, that they're famous, they're culturally significant, and I like them. So that's all the things. So there is a bit of subjectivity in there, because there's ones here that I like. There's some quite well-known songs that I really don't like, and I haven't put those on the list, although there's a couple that snuck in like that. So now I have 30 songs, the 30 greatest Led Zepp songs. I've got 10 songs, 1 to 10, and then I've got 11 to 20, and then I've got 21 to 30. So there's 3 bands, and this is where it does get objective. So what I did then, I said to myself, if you have a song that's in the top 10, that is worth 3 points. If you've got a song that is between 10 and 20, that's worth 2 points. And if you've got a song that's in the 30, that's worth 1 point. And then I awarded these points to the albums, coming up with a completely bonkers list, which I would have never come up with, but it's based upon my perception of what their great songs are. So basically what I'm measuring is the albums that have the most great songs on, which surely is a good criteria. Of course, we could also be measuring the artwork and how the songs run together and all that type of stuff. And this video does not take that into account. It really just deals with the quality of songs, right? Now, I'm 5 minutes in, and I'm sure that those nasty little viewers, right, that like to go, oh, he's waffling on, oh god, he could have done this in 5 minutes. I have spoken for 5 minutes, but I wanted to explain to the other moaners who say my lists are completely subjective. I hope I've shown that there is a degree of objectivity in this list. It is the Led Zeppelin mega ranking. And once I finish this, we will have an objective idea of what's good and what's not so good. Right, so I'm now going to start on my list of 30 songs. There's a lot here. I'm only going to say a few sentences about it. So those of you who don't like me waffling on, you can now watch a list where I don't waffle on, okay? So at number 30, I have Misty Mountain Hop, the opener of side 2 of the untitled album, also known as Led Zepp 4, which is a strange but wonderful track, very psychedelic, very weird. It's not one of the most famous songs, but it's managed to sneak on, really, because it's one of my favourite songs by them. I think it's a fantastic song. At number 29, I have The Song Remains the Same. The Song Remains the Same is off House of the Holy. It's like one of their most proggiest moments. It's the album opener. It goes through all different moods and all different styles of music. It's all over the place. It in some places really full on Zepp, you know, and other places it's quite ethereal. It's very expansive. There's a lot of production. Jimmy Page is all over the place with all different guitar sounds and colours. Incredible song. I think that it really gains fame because not only is it the opener of House of the Holy, but it's also the song that they named their live album and film after. So this has made this a sort of, in terms of Led Zepp folklore, this is a very well-known song because the album Song Remains the Same is named after it. So that's why it gets on the list, and it is a great song. At number 28 from Led Zepp 3, I have Gallows Pole, which is Zeppelin doing a reworking, and they often did this, of an old blues song or folk song. And this is a very, very old song. I know the Lead Belly version that I think was recorded in the 1940s, but he was probably singing this 30 or 40 years before, where it's called Gallows Pole. And this tells the story of someone who is about to be hanged, and he could bribe the hangman, and he's waiting for somebody to come with the money to get out of getting hung. It's interesting because it's on Led Zepp 3. It marks the move away from sort of just crunching blues rock. There's something going on this which is absolutely wonderful. Right, at number 27, I have We're Gonna Groove, right, which was originally by Benny King and was like a swinging sort of soul number. Led Zeppelin played it a lot. It was a cover version that they played a lot in the early days. It got recorded and it never got a release on a proper album, but it did then open up Coda, that came out 2 years after the dissolution of Led Zeppelin, 2 years after John Bonham died, and it was the opener. And I've always thought it's Led Zeppelin at their best. It's so brilliant and rocking. If this had been on one of their main albums, this would have been an important tune. They are playing absolutely brilliant. And unlike Song Remains the Same, this is an example of just the band in the room, guitar, bass and drums and vocals, just going for it. It's absolutely wonderful. When I played with Robert Plant back in the 20 odd years ago, we didn't do any Zepp songs, but we did sometimes do versions of songs that they'd also covered, and this is one of the songs we used to play, and we used to really extend it out. So I've got personal memories. It's objective, you see. I got personal memories of this song's always been one of my favourites, right? At number 26, I have All of My Love, which is the beautiful ballad that Robert Plant wrote after the demise of his son Karak a few years before. It appears on the album In Through the Outdoor. For me, it's one of the few highlights of In Through the Outdoor, which is an album I was never keen on. I think it's the greatest song on there. And I think what makes it so great is at that point Led Zeppelin were about to move into the 1980s. They were going to go somewhere else. And I think what Robert had here was a blueprint for an approach which would have really worked well in the 1980s, and move away from sort of crunching heavy metal to sort of more, you know, balladier song writing and singing, which of course is where Robert has gone. It's a beautiful tune. It's very unlike anything else in the Zepp canon, but it has all the hallmarks. You know, John Bonham sounds fantastic on it. Robert does a beautiful vocal performance, and there's a really brilliant guitar solo from Jimmy Page and a beautiful keyboard solo from John Paul Jones. Right, moving on. Number 25, I have T for One, the slow blues that closes out side one of Presence. An absolutely beautiful tune. Zeppelin always went back to slow blues, and there's slow blues on the first album, but for me they really are coming out of that sort of British white blues rock approach. As Led Zeppelin develop, they start to have an approach and a style where they can make this type of blues their own, and it seems to go beyond what we would expect from just an electric blues band. There's a couple of tunes on here where they've done this, and on T for One, which has so much space and so much air, is an absolutely wonderful tune. So that's why I got number 25. At number 24, also from Presence, I have Nobody's Fault But Mine, which is a cover of another old blues song originally performed, and I assume written, although these songs almost go back to the beginning of time, but originally performed and written by Blind Willie Johnson, who was an early blues a performer, singer and guitarist. The original was recorded just guitar and voice. He's playing slide guitar on it, probably with a penknife. It's some of the most incredible slide guitaring you'd ever hear. Blind Willie Johnson, who I think he ended up in Burbank as a sort of street side preacher. And he really, more than any blues artist, really, he really is an example of what I always say about the blues, is this incredible mix of the sacred and the profane. And on here, it's a lament. It's a beautiful lament. Now, Zeppelin take this beautiful acoustic lament, and they turn it into an absolutely virtuoso performance. And on here, we can really hear how incredible that band was, and the incredible hoops that they could jump through. It's unbelievable. Always been one of my favourites of mine. So that's why I got number 24, Nobody's Fault But Mine. At number 23, I have In the Light, which opens up side 3 of Physical Graffiti. This is one of Led Zepp's epics, and I don't think it gets mentioned that much. You know, everyone raves about Kashmir off that album, but for me, that droning introduction, which is almost like Indian classical music, it's all synthetic, and then that slow crunching riff builds in, and it's got sort of an orchestral beauty to it. This, for me, is one of Zeppelin's high points musically. And so that's what I got at number 23, is In the Light. Not that well known, but it had to be on the list. And number 22, also from Physical Graffiti, we have Trampled Underfoot. Trampled Underfoot is almost like a funk track. It's a kicking, meter-esque funk track. They're really, you know, burning on that, really propelled by John Paul Jones' incredible clavinet playing. Zeppelin loved the funk. They loved James Brown. They had an approach to it which was their own, and I think they're probably at their most successful with this one, Trampled Underfoot. Again, this is another tune that I once, in a pub on New Year's Eve, I managed to end up on stage with Robert Plant, and we played this tune. And infused by the funkiness, I went berserk on it, and I was playing all over it, doing my best zigaboo impersonation, and Robert had a big smile on his face, and when we came off, he turned around and said, "That was great, Andy, never do it again." Right, at number 21, the track that goes on Physical Graffiti before Trampled Underfoot, it's Houses of the Holy. One of their great songs, and again, this one is is a well-known title because there was an album called Houses of the Holy, and Led Zeppelin, in their infinite wisdom, decided not to put Houses of the Holy on the album Houses of the Holy, but to put Jamaica and the crunge and all this weird stuff on Houses of the Holy. I've always been baffled by that, because if Houses of the Holy had been on Houses of the Holy, it would have made Houses of the Holy one of their great albums, rather than just dropping down a little bit in the perception of great albums. I think there's some incredible stuff on Houses of the Holy. If you're a progressive rock fan, it's probably your favourite album, isn't it? But no, it ends up on Physical Graffiti, and what a brilliant song. At number 20, also from Houses of the Holy, we have The Ocean. Now, Houses of the Holy actually is so proggy all over the place. There's so much keyboard work on and acoustic stuff, and there's reggae versions and funk versions. It's quite hard to find a rocking track on that album. And I think that's why your sort of general Led Zeppelin fan isn't so keen on Houses of the Holy, perhaps. I think that when it comes to that album, Houses of the Holy, I think that probably The Ocean is the most bone-crunching rock track, even though it morphs eventually into this sort of rock and roll, jam. And there's a few comedy moments. A lot of comedy on Houses of the Holy. But it's got a killer riff. It's one of their great heavy rock tunes. That's what I've got at number 20. At number 19, I have, from the first album, the album that opened up side 1 of Led Zeppelin 1, the tune that introduced the world to Led Zeppelin, which is Good Times, Bad Times. And of course, all us drummers, when we first heard it, was like, what is Bonham doing on here? It's one of the great drum introductions. No one's ever heard John Bonham before. He's probably played on a few little, local singles and a few demos and things like that. Suddenly he's got a record deal with Atlantic. He's in a big studio. Here he is. And that is how he says hello to the world. It's mind-blowing. And the other thing I love about Good Times, Bad Times is that at this point, Led Zeppelin aren't too sure who they are. And they're writing real heavy rock stuff and these bombastic slow blues. There's a bit of acoustics, all sorts of stuff on Led Zeppelin 1. But there is also an element of pop music, right? And there's 2 songs on there. And this one has that in the chorus. You can hear a chorus, it's got backing vocals. It's quite hooky. This is Led Zeppelin writing a pop song. Of course, they stopped doing all that, right? You don't get good times, bad times. I had my share. You don't get that so much later on. Robert ends up doing a lot of baby, baby, and all that bit, right? So, Good Times, Bad Times. Really interesting tune, incredible. What an album. That's at number 19. At number 18, I have Heartbreaker off Led Zepp 2. Now, this song is a real heavy rock song with a killer riff. Incredible. And for guitarists out there, when this album came out in 1969, that guitar break, that launched 1,000 guitarists. People like Steve Vai picked up a guitar and wanted to play like that. All the blistering, fast-picking guitaring that we had in the 1980s has its genesis partly in that. I think Alvin Lee had something to do with it as well, but partly in that, when guitarists heard that, it was astonishing. Now, we look back now with our sort of, subjective view of history. We've got all these monster guitarists that have emerged in rock and roll, and we go, oh, well, Jimmy Page was a bit fumbly, really. But no, back then, that blew everybody away, and that's why it's got relatively high up on the list at number 18. At number 17, I have the mighty Dazed and Confused off the first album. This, of course, was this is based upon another song. I know they gave it their own writing credit, and off the top of my head here, I can't remember it. But the point is, this is a song that goes back, and the Yardbirds were playing this. Of course, when Led Zeppelin formed in 1969, originally they were called the New Yardbirds. They were formed to try and continue that brand, and they went out playing some of the routines. Now, you can go online and see the Yardbirds doing Dazed Confused, and you can see some of the routines there with, Jimmy Page playing the violin bow. And this is interesting because on the debut album, he does the violin bow bit. So that shtick had been developed, which is quite interesting. The Yardbirds had enabled Jimmy Page to arrive at that point sort of prepared. It's not your classic debut album. John Paul Jones and Jimmy Page were stalwarts of the UK session scene. Dazed and Confused, it could well be argued, is also the beginning of progressive rock. It's quite long, it's quite detailed, it goes all over the place. And live, they used to, venture into territories quoting like Gustav Holst's modern classical music. It's an incredible tune. And in the early days, I think it was the centrepiece to their gigs. So, of course, we have it at number 17. At number 16, from Led Zepp 2, we have Ramble On, the beautiful acoustic tune with that incredible clicky drumming that John Bonham does. Lots of Tolkien-esque British countryside English aesthetic, all the stuff I love. Absolutely fantastic. What can I say about it? If you want to know a bit more about it, I think Rick Beato goes and does a analysis of that tune, so go and check that out. I ain't going to go any more than that. Anyway, at number 15 I have In My Time of Dying. You know what I was saying about when they do old blues tunes, and in the early days it was a bit hackneyed, a bit sort of British blues boom sound, and by the mid-70s they developed their own approach. This has always been one of my favourite moments for Zeppelin. I put it up pretty high on the list. It is quite a well-known tune, and of course it's a reworking of an old blues tune. But here again, what we have is Zeppelin in the room, right? It feels like you're in there with them, okay? And they start up, and you don't know whether this arrangement is worked out or whether they're just going for it. There's incredible harmonica breaks on this, as well, like you get on Nobody's Fault But Mine. And I've always absolutely loved Robert Plant's harmonica playing, and he has a bite and an attack which is absolutely fantastic. Jimmy Page is off the scale. He's playing slide guitar, and it's all over the place. And John Bonham, one of his finest moments. And it just careers on, and towards the end you feel like they're playing because they love playing, and when it all finishes and you hear Bonham shout, and they want to go and listen to it, and the engineer goes, come and have a listen, that they've struck gold. And that feeling of in the moment, which is something that Led Zeppelin were brilliant at. One of the few bands where you could just hear a power trio with a vocalist on top, and then on other times you would hear these multi-layered wonder. And I think in terms of them as a band, this could well be their finest moment on a studio album. So that's why I got it at number 15. At number 14, I have Celebration Day. Now, Celebration Day is off Led Zepp 3. It's weird and strange, and it's gained some sort of prestige, I suppose, by being again used for the name of the live album and video that came from their 2008 Get Back Together, the biggest gig in the whole history of mankind, that gig. It's weird. Led Zepp 3 is weird, and Celebration Day is just incredible. And that, of course, this is the one that's got the famous intro where it all starts off weird, and you just got a guitar strumming, and then Robert singing, and then suddenly the drums seem to spin in, and that's of course because this is the track where the engineer accidentally recorded over Bonham's drums, and then in a fit of thinking he might get in serious trouble, decided to do a runner, and so they had to fix it. And of course these mistakes make genius, don't they? So number 13 off Led Zepp 2, Thank You. Okay, Zeppelin often get accused for not writing, being not a song band. It's more about the playing. There's a lot of Robert screeching and moaning over the top of heavy crunchy riffs, and they don't write songs. Thank You is an absolutely fantastic song. It's been covered so many times. The Chris Cornell acoustic version is absolutely sublime. When I played with Robert, and of course when I do this list, I'm going to have to keep going back to that because I have a sort of insider view somewhat of this band. But I'm also a huge fan of Led Zeppelin. when I played with Robert, we ended up doing our last gig at Wolverhampton Wolfram Hall. That was the last gig, and the last song we ever played in that band to thank all the fans that had been coming was that song "Thank You," and it was a very emotional moment for me. So it's come up pretty high, number 13. In the same vein, that sort of acoustic side that Led Zeppelin have, at number 12, I have the Rain song off House of the Holy. This is an absolute epic, and every time I listen to it, I'm always impressed with how much the band is able to create a tension. It weaves and it bobs and it moves and eventually you feel like there should be a payoff, but it never gets there, and eventually it does. But the way it winds through and the way it's sequenced on side 1 of House of the Holy, you know, with Celebration Day before, and the way it drops down and goes into that has always felt like one big track. And the Rain song for me is it is one of the great moments of House of the Holy. It's one of their greatest songs of all time. You know, we're really getting into the top 10, so we're talking about some of the greatest rock songs ever made. At number 11, I have Communication Breakdown off the first album. This is where their most sort of proto-punk, heavy rock, verging on heavy metal, right? That fast drum beat. This is where it starts. You know that Deep Purple have heard that, and they come up with the same groove and the same approach for Speed King. Black Sabbath really just ripped this song off for Paranoid. This is where it starts. Although I've been listening to these tunes. I've been trying to zone in on the beginning of heavy rock, heavy metal, where it is. And we could say it's with the Kinks, couldn't we? You really got me. We could even go back to Smokestack Lightning by Howling Wolf. But the tune Summertime Blues, the cover of the Eddie Cochran classic by Blue Cheer, which comes out a year or so before this, I think has got the blueprint for this. I would want to know whether Jimmy or Robert were listening to that tune. I know that they used to cover it at that time, and I know Robert was a big fan of Eddie Cochran. And so it could well be that they knew that tune. And so if that's the case, we can lay the responsibility at for heavy metal at Eddie Cochran's feet. The great Eddie Cochran, who I think was a musical genius, and who died way too young, 20 years old. And as a side note, my father-in-law, who's a singer in the early 60s, he was signed to Decca Records, and he was one of the artists managed by Larry Parnes, was also on that tour, and he was on that gig in Bristol with Eddie Cochran, and he came out of the venue and he jumped into a taxi, and Gene Vincent ran over and said, "No, you'll have to get another one, we're getting in here." And Gene Vincent and Eddie Cochran's girlfriend at the time jumped in and drove off. So it's Eddie Cochran. I might do a video on Eddie Cochran, because I think in terms of rock music, his importance has not been stated. Never expected to talk about all that. Anyway, now we enter into the top 10. So here's my top 10 favourite Led Zeppelin songs. So at number 10, I have Battle of Evermore off the Untitled album, also known as Led Zeppelin 4. This is a beautiful acoustic sort of Tolkien-esque story. And even though there's hardly any instrumentation, there's acoustic guitar, mandolin. We've got Sandy Denny, the late great Sandy Denny from Fairport Convention, with a beautiful vocal weaving around Roberts, and they both got such high voices, but they seem to be able to negotiate. It's absolutely, and Sandy Denny gives Battle of Evermore, it gives it a sound, because I don't think there's any other song that's got another singer on it. So this is Led Zeppelin with another voice in there, so it gives it a completely unique quality. The middle section I've always thought is absolutely sublime. It's Led Zeppelin at their best when it comes to this sort of quite acoustic stuff. It's just sublime. This is incredible. And what a gamble, because side 1 of the Untitled album, Led Zeppelin 4, is probably the greatest side in rock music, I would say. And this song could have pulled it down, this long acoustic winding thing in the middle, but it doesn't. It just makes that side so powerful. Battle of Evermore, number 10. At number 9, I got the tune that precedes Battle of Evermore on the Untitled album, and that's Rock and Roll, which was an impromptu jam of the band. Zeppelin loved rock and roll, as I was saying before, and this is where I imagine these guys are in the studio, you know, when they're not even in the studio, they're in Manor House, aren't they, in the middle of nowhere, freezing cold, you know, all the mics set up in some, you know, baroque, you know, living room somewhere, and Bonham decides to go into the drum beat from, is it Lordy Miss Claudy? I don't know. Which one's the drum beat? Oh, God, this is... Oh, Andy, you should have researched this. He goes into this drum beat. I always thought that drum beat originally was by Earl Palmer. It's not. It's by some guy I don't know. And I don't know if he got any royalties, but he in a way, influenced probably the greatest drum introduction to any tune in history. And off the back of that... And when they kick in, it's pure rock and roll, but they have managed to capture the spirit of rock and roll, and this is where rock music comes, and it's called rock and roll, and it points, and they know it, and that's why it's called rock and roll. You know, and they've got that bit. It's been a long time. It's just absolutely, they know what they're doing. Even though they're only in their early 20s, they know they're infused with the spirit of rock and roll at this point. Number 9, that's what I've got. And number 8 from Presence, Achilles' Last Stand. Again, I'm a drummer, and I know this is a bit objective, but I love the ones when Bonham's going for it. Achilles' Last Stand is like an epic. It's like a prog song. It is mighty. You know, before this was recorded, you know, Robert had been on holiday in Greece, and he had had a terrible car accident. He'd lay there, you know, twisted up in the wreckage. I think somebody came along, they called an ambulance. The ambulance came along, and I think somebody, don't know if it was him or his wife at the time, got the wrong blood, and it was just awful. And he ends up in this hospital with a broken pelvis, I think. He comes out, and they go into the studio to make this album. And this album is... That accident is all over this album. You can see Led Zeppelin having to work around that. So Robert is singing this from a wheelchair, and you can hear that in his voice. But the thing is, also you have the echoes of this sort of Greek tragedy. You could feel the gods. You could feel those Greek gods at work. You know, when you listen to this, it is mighty, to use a word that Robert uses in that. Incredible. Number 8. Right, well, I'm at half an hour, and I'm still on the top 30, and I'm sure I'm chatting too much, but we're nearly there. Right, so at number 7, I have the sublime Since I've Been Loving You off Led Zepp 3, and this for me is where Zeppelin discovered their approach, that pulled in this sort of ethereal English aesthetic folk music with the blues, with rock music, and there's a heaviness there, but there's a subtlety to it, and it's absolutely beautiful. It's incredible. I think it's possibly my favourite slow blues ever made by anybody, including B.B. King and, you know, and Freddie King and Albert King and you know, all the kings that have made, you know, slow blues out there, all of them, you know. Billie Jean King, did she ever do a blues? I don't know. Who else could there be? All the kings, you know. I was trying to go for something funny then. You could add in. Anyway, forget the kings, you know, because this is not where we want to go, is it? But for me, since I've Been Loving You, it beats them all. It's a beautiful tune. I don't think there's a bass on that, is there? I think it's organ, guitar and drums. And I think the bass notes are coming from the pedals off the organ, played by the virtuoso genius of Led Zeppelin, John Paul Jones. And John Paul Jones was responsible to really pulling together this next tune. It really was his baby. At number 6 from House of the Holy, No Quarter. This is where they are at their most proggiest. This is the best song on Houses of the Holy. It's absolutely incredible. It's got this sort of modal, almost like jazz sound to it with that electric piano, but it also has that sort of epic Tolkien-esque. You always feel with these songs, I can imagine, Frodo Baggins going through towards the sort of Mordor. I know Robert doesn't like the fact that he pulled from all this Tolkien stuff, but I love it. I love Tolkien. I love all that, and I can't. I'm a sucker for it, and I think it's wonderful. If you get the blues and then you stick Tolkien in, you get Led Zeppelin, and that's what rock music is. It's Tolkien in the blues, right? Imagine B.B. King, or Freddie King, or Albert King, or any of the Kings, Billie Jean King, any of the Kings, but place them in Mordor, and you have heavy rock. At number 4, one of the greatest rock songs in history, Black Dog, the tune that opens up Led Zepp 4, also known as the Untitled album. Black Dog, where you get that sort of wind up at the sound at the beginning. What's going on here? And then Robert just comes in, just pure vocal. Hey, mama, say the way you move, gonna make you sweat, gonna make you groove. Just voice, it's genius. And then the greatest riff of all time. And this riff goes all over the place. I can remember as a kid hearing this, and it's just incredible, absolutely brilliant. Number 4, Black Dog. At number, I think I've lost my numbers here. So I'm at number 5. Oh my God, I've got my numbers wrong here. So there's more, because we should be at number 3. But at number 3, I have Kashmir. I know what I'm going to do. This is clever. I know what I'm going to do. Don't worry about this. I have made a mistake. Always happens. New viewers to the channel, this always happens. Right. At number 3, I've got Kashmir. One of their great moments, full orchestra, that really simple but hypnotic drum beat, the way the guitar seems to spin out in a different time to the rest of the band, and it's so huge. And again, Zeppelin are great at this. You picture Kashmir. I don't know what Kashmir looks like, but when I hear it, I can picture what Kashmir looks like. It's absolutely incredible. And of course, this thing got covered by Puff Daddy for that Godzilla film and chucked this into the sort of mainstream culture. And we know the big song, that you know the song that's going to be at the top of this, right? But in a way, that film has almost displaced that famous song. And I know for many people, Kashmir is the greatest song by Led Zeppelin. But not for me. At number 2, I have... I've cocked up here. I have When the Levee Breaks. That incredible drum beat that launched hip-hop, launched 1,000 hip-hop records, that incredible drum beat that gave Beastie Boys their career, and this hypnotic blues that goes back to Memphis Mini, so we have a bunch of white middle-class guys, with Robert Plant from West Bromwich telling you about a levee breaking, and you believe him because they have got it in the production. This is, for me, absolutely one of the great moments. It goes beyond rock music. It's got every type of music in. It's hypnotic, it's incredible. You've got incredible harmonica work from Robert, incredible guitar work, everything sounds amazing. It's probably the greatest produced song of all time. It's at number 2. So what have I got at number 1? I have at number 1, for me, the greatest Led Zeppelin song is Immigrant Song. That is rock music. Immigrant Song. Robert Plant standing on the front of a Viking ship with his fist in the air, shouting, "Ah!" This is rock music. This is Led Zeppelin. It personifies Led Zeppelin. That's what you want when you buy Led Zeppelin now. It's Immigrant Song, and that's what I have at number 1. Which means I have missed off the song. I have missed it off, haven't I? Right? When this video started, you knew what was going to be number 1. Everybody knows what should be number 1 on here, and I haven't put it on because I made a mistake. So ubiquitous, so obvious, I didn't put it on. And as I got there, I thought, oh my God, you've got number 1. And then I've numbered them from down, and it's not even on here. It's not even on, but we know it's too great even to be at the top of this chart. That song, I'm not even going to say what the song is. right? If you're watching this video and you don't know what song I'm talking about, then tough. What are you doing here? Go over to some other YouTuber. Go on, sling your hook. You shouldn't be here, you casual Led Zeppelin, don't know anything about music fan. What have you been listening to? Greta Van Fleet? Is that why you've come here? What are you doing here if you don't know what I'm talking about? If you don't know what I'm talking about now, what are you doing here? It's ridiculous. Sling your hook, casual. Sling your hook, go on. Bugger off. Now, they're gone. So you know exactly what song I haven't put on this list. You know what's at the top. Now, how many bands with this amount of incredible classic songs could I have at the top of the chart? It's not even number one. You know that when you have a chart and it goes to number one, well, above number one is this secret place, like a platonic realm of perfection, and you can't even go in there, right? This song is in there, right? This band have produced a song which everybody who knows, it's so ubiquitous that you know what I'm talking about. Against these other songs, it is, I think, at number one, we have the greatest song of all time. You think? And this song does everything that Led Zeppelin does. Right? From the beautiful acoustic, to the swingy, to the funkiness, to the jazziness, with the great guitar solo, and then a crunchy riff. It does everything, doesn't it? So, that was my top 30, plus the platonic realm that can't be mentioned right at the top. They were my top 30 songs. Now we've got that, I can score each of those songs. So if you're in the top 10, you get 3 points. If you're in the top 10 to 20, you get 2 points. And we now get the objective ranking of this. This is the mega ranking, you see. Mega ranking of Led Zeppelin. So now we get the ascendancy, the hierarchy of genius of the Led Zeppelin albums. And I'm going to tell you this. Now, when I did this, you got to tell, I didn't know what this list is. I didn't create this list. You can say it's subjective, but you go, yeah, but it's based upon what you think are the greatest songs. And you didn't put out the tiles, and that's my favourite song. Yeah, it's one of my favourite songs too, but I just didn't think it should go on there, you know. And I'm sure Carouselambra, I'm sure Fall in the Rain, there's a whole bunch of ones I've missed out, but I've tried my best. But there is an element of objectivity. There's that they go, God, and Andy, you've just spent 3/4 of an hour going through 30 songs on a video where you said you weren't going to waffle. You know, well, I tell you, before I do this, I do have a message for all those out there who have complained that I talk too much. And I have planned this. Normally I don't plan my videos, which is why I do waffle on. But I did plan this response to you. So for those of you who have, you know, lodged your complaint, I suppose, about me waffling on, I just want to say this to you. Right. Albums ranked. There's no live albums in it, it's just studio albums. So, with 1 point, right at the bottom, with only one song on the list, In Through the Outdoor. I don't like that album. It's my favourite album, Andy. How can you not like In Through the Outdoor? It's bloody brilliant. It's really brilliant. How can you put it at the bottom? It's really good. You just don't understand it. Yeah. So that's what I got at the bottom. How many albums have we got here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 albums. So at number 9, I have In Through the Outdoor, which means at number 8, also on 1, so they're sharing this a little bit, I have Coda. But I put Coda above In Through the Outdoor because it's a better album. Even the outtakes off In Through the Outdoor on Coda are better than the stuff that's on In Through the Outdoor. Why did they not put those tunes on? But Walter's Walk, We're Gonna Groove, Bonzo's Montreux, that incredible version of I Can't Quit You Baby, Poor Tom, they're all amazing. Absolutely incredible. Those Wear and Tear is better than anything on In Through the Outdoor. Why did they put that? Why did they put that on the album and did that awful country western thing? But I don't even know what that's called. What's it called, that one? Hot Dog. Hot Dog. What the hell's Hot Dog? They should have. We need the comedy Led Zeppelin album. They need to get the crunge. They need to get Jamaica, Hot Dog, all this stuff that they did. I respect them for it. I do respect them for it, you know. And but Hot Dog, really, instead of Wear and Tearing, really. So that's what I've got at sort of joint bottom places, Coda and In Through the Act Door. The next album with 5 points, and it's one of my favourite albums. This would be in my top 3, and just shows like this is not a subjective list. At number 7 on my list is Presence. Right, and I don't think that is any comment against Presence. It's just relative to this genius. At number 6, I have the first album, Led Zeppelin 1, which I think has dropped down just because Led Zeppelin are pretty well formed on that album, but there's still elements to go in. And that got 6 points. At number 5, I have Houses of the Holy with 8 points. Great album. At number 4, I have Physical Graffiti. Now, I think for many people that would be number 2. But it hasn't worked out like that when you look at incredible songs. And the fact that that album's a double album, and it isn't as great songs on that as the albums that are above it, is a testament to the fact that there is quite a little bit of not so great stuff on Physical Graffiti. Did I say that? I did, yeah. You got to remember, that album was called. Led Zeppelin weren't in a good place at that point. I think John Paul Jones had left and they didn't know what to do. That's why there's so many tracks that are basically Bonham, like Kashmir's Bonham and Jimmy Page, you know. You could tell that old John Paul Jones come back in and dubbed that bass line in afterwards. So they weren't in a good place. And I know that what they got in the studio, didn't know what to do. So they just recorded a whole bunch of Elvis Presley songs, which I think are still to see the light of day. But anyway, Physical Graffiti was pulled together from stuff from Led Zepp 3, Led Zepp 4 and House of the Holy. That's what it was, with a few, like Custard Pie was recorded at the time. Anyway, that's what we've got. So it's an incredible album. It's a brilliant album. People love it. I put it on the other day and I thought, this isn't quite in the same league as these 3 albums that we've got at the top, which is of course at number 3 with 9 points, Led Zeppelin 3, and at number 2 with also 9 points is Led Zepp 2. And I think that's about right. Led Zepp 3 for me is a greater album than Led Zepp 2. But if you want a definitive Led Zepp album, you go for Led Zepp 2. It's got a whole lot of love. Have I missed a whole lot of love off this bloody list? Oh my, no, I haven't missed it. I must have put a whole lot of love on this list. Well, where the hell is it? It was at number 5. I never talked about a whole lot. It is on my list. It is on my list. It was between No Quarter and Black Dog. I just jumped straight to Black Dog, and I didn't even talk about a whole lot of love. Oh, you've cocked this video up, haven't you, Andy? It's going out though. I've been talking for 3/4 of an hour. I'm not gonna go back on me thing. So at number 1, I have, of course, the untitled album Led Zepp 4. It's got Black Dog on. It's got Rock and Roll on. It's got Battle of Evermore on. It's got Stairway to Heaven on. Oh my God, I said it. Sorry. It's flipped over. You've got Misty Mountain Hop. Then you get 4 Sticks, which is incredible. It's just weird. That's why I didn't make the list. Then you got Going to California. Little bit of a Joni Mitchell rip-off, but fantastic stuff. And then When the Levee Breaks. I mean, this is a sublime album. I think it made my greatest albums in history video. Not most important albums, I just didn't make that one. Anyway, and that got 16 points. Nearly double what the rest of them got. That is my list. So I'm just going to go through that again for you. At number 9, In Through the Outdoor. At number 8, Coda. At number 7, Presence. At number 6, Led Zepp 1. At number 5, House of the Holy. At number 4, Physical Graffiti. At number 3, Led Zepp 3. At number 2, Led Zepp 2. And at number 1, Led Zepp 4. That is the end of my mega ranking of the great Led Zeppelin. This is me nodding to you, round of applause now. Thank you. Thank you. Don't know what you're clapping for, that was rubbish, wasn't it? Right, so if you liked me stumbling over my list and getting it all wrong, right, if you liked this approach, if you liked the waffle, if you like my objective opinions that aren't subjective, if you like that, If you like the fact you're watching this thinking Andy's only done this to poke fun at the people who put those negative comments. He can't stand a negative comment, but he doesn't come out all angry. He gets that. I do. I've just filmed this before this another video, which is I've just filmed. It's only 6 minutes long. Although it might be long, I might add a bit on the end. Oh, I'm going to. Anyway, I'm waffling. Yeah, you do waffle. I waffle. I can't not waffle. I can't waffle. That's me. And if you like the waffling, like. And if you want to see more waffling, subscribe. If you want to support me financially in my waffling, and you want to see more waffling that is even more waffly, then you could become a patron. There it is down below. And go over there, and I will waffle to your heart's content there. And if you don't want to see my extra waffling, because there's enough waffling here, but you do want to support me, I have a PayPal tip jar down below, and if you put a little bit of money in there, that'll be wonderful. I bought something this morning with my PayPal money. I felt confident, because I'm a bit skint at the moment, and I felt confident to buy this thing, and it's going to help me here with the channel immensely. But I won't get into all the nuts and bolts of workings of this channel. I will now finish. This is 50 minutes long. It's way too long. I hope you liked it. I'll see you on the next video. Thanks for watching.